How are you? Howdy.
Mike Hanna, Mahaska County.
Hey,
Glad
thanks
to
for
meet
coming,
you.
Mike. Hi.
What's up, Rob?
How you doing?
Good, you?
Pretty good.
Good.
Hi. How are you?
Good.
Good. Well, thanks for coming out, everybody. We'll get this thing kicked off. What a nice day for the moment.
Right now.
Right now. Yeah, another hour or two. We're doing them all day, which we might end up regretting later on, but we'll find out, right? Well, we got to do them either way. So I like to come out and do these things in person with public notice ahead of time. I think it's important for people to have the opportunity to ask me questions too. So a couple things I'll highlight that we got going on in our office over the last few months. First one I think is a pretty important deal. We have got more accountability in state government than we've had in a very long time. Three things I'm going to talk about to illustrate that for you. One is what I heard from a Republican elected official in Almaquis County, way up in northeast Iowa, as far northeast as you can get. He said, "I've been a state employee for 24 years, and I've never seen more middle managers and bureaucrats worried about what the state auditor might think." That is a good thing. He meant it as a compliment, and I took it as one too. That's this office's job. We are supposed to be the taxpayer's watchdog. People who work in state government should be concerned, right, about what we have to say, about what we think. I heard a similar comment from someone that I used to work with. Said I was talking to somebody who didn't know we used to work together. I said, hey, they told me, you know, our agency that I work with used to always buy this thing and do it this way, even though we knew we weren't really supposed to. But we quit doing it that way now because the new auditor seems more willing to call people out for it. I said, thank you for passing along the compliment. It sounds like people have noticed, right? That was the whole idea here. The third piece that you don't have to rely on hearsay for is the win that we had at the Iowa Supreme Court this year. Unanimous victory. We had asked for documentation from the University of Iowa in relation to what is essentially the biggest loan in state history. They call it a public-private partnership. It has to do with their utility plant. You can call it what you want. Here's how it works. We get a whole lot of money up front, and then we pay it back over 50 years with compounding interest. We all know what that is. That's a loan. So we had asked for some documentation on it because it is the single biggest financial transaction in state history. And they didn't want to provide some of the records that we asked for. And we said, well, this isn't a get-to thing. This is kind of a have-to kind of thing. And they still said they didn't want to. So we gave them a subpoena. They ignored it. We took them to court. We won. They appealed to the Iowa Supreme Court, and we won there unanimously. In between us asking the questions the first time and actually getting the victory from the Supreme Court, they finalized the deal. So perhaps that had a piece of their decision to ignore us and then appeal the decision. But point being, that decision is now out there for every other person that works in state government to take note of. We are willing to take you to court and beat you twice if we have to, in order to provide some degree of transparency and accountability for taxpayers, right? We have a, hey, how are you, Eric?
Good, welcome.
Thanks. We have a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old in our house. I've noticed if one gets a timeout or some kind of consequence on any particular night, usually the other one won't need one. That's called accountability. It's called deterrence, more specifically. By holding people accountable when they behave poorly, other people notice. That's the fundamental thing that's going on there. And it's going on in state government. The stories that I just told you, the Supreme Court case that we just won, they illustrate that. State agencies, state departments, they are not that different from little boys. They don't want to get in trouble either, and as long as they know that somebody is paying attention, they may decide to just follow the rules. Or maybe not to push them, maybe not to toe the line, just take a step back from it to begin with. We told folks we were going to do that, and that's what we're trying to do, right? That's what this office is supposed to be. It's the one place in state government that is supposed to be digging in and making really comfortable people feel a little bit uncomfortable, right? Making appointed people, making people who are career public servants make sure that they are focusing on serving the public like they're supposed to, not serving a party, not serving themselves personally. That's what this job is supposed to be about. The other thing that I think is important that I want to highlight is the flip side of that, because there's positive accountability too, right? We should be pointing out when people are doing well, not just criticizing people when they are doing poorly. And so we have been doing that as well. You may have noticed, I don't remember when this one was, but the flip side of that one University of Iowa deal where we took them to court is a University of Iowa deal with a big piece of property in Polk County that they owned. It was getting sold for way under the assessed value. And there had been questions raised publicly about whether or not there was something going on there that shouldn't be. And so we said, well, we can look into that, and so we did. As it turned out, the bid that they were taking was the highest bid they got, and even the Polk County Assessor's Office agreed that the assessed value was essentially arbitrary. Are most assessed values arbitrary? Not at all. But this is property that had been owned by a nonprofit for 20 years. Nonprofits don't pay property taxes. And so no one had had any reason or any need to really nail down what that real value was. In addition to that, it was a very big and strange piece of property, which makes it harder to assess too. So in that case, we dug in and we said, hey, don't worry about this one, it looks okay, right? We're also doing that more at the local level, and I want to emphasize that. We're doing that through our PI program. PI stands for Public Innovation and Efficiencies. And what we're doing with that program is promoting public innovation and efficiency. It's a good thing to do. If there's one single thing that got me really excited to run for state auditor, it was promoting efficiency and innovation. I saw in the law that the office had the ability to do it, but just also was aware that they weren't really doing it. And I thought, cool. A nice chance to get up every morning and do something positive that I'm excited about doing. I had been in the Attorney General's office doing mostly public corruption prosecution, prosecuting a lot of financial crime, violent crime as well, sexual offenses too. Criminal law, I mean, you might get what you want, you might win on occasion, but at the end of it, nobody really is happy. Everything you do in criminal prosecution is just kind of rooted in sin and darkness, the worst things that people can do to each other. And that's not fun to think about all day, every day. So when I saw that the auditor's office, who I'd worked with a lot because they investigate public corruption and I was prosecuting it, when I saw that they had the ability to promote efficiency across the state but weren't really doing it systemically, I thought, great, something I can get up and be excited about doing every day. And so our PI program is the result. Got 3 bad puns for you to describe how the program works. Number 1, the pie chart is kind of the heart of the program. It's a checklist, basic money-saving practices that you can do at the local level. We ask local entities to fill it out, check yes or no for each of the ones that you're doing or not doing, and then send it back in. That is then provided, publicly available on our website for people to look at and see how their city, their county, their school district's doing. And then second piece, we get to have a pie contest. Pie contest is simple. Who's doing the best? Little competition can be a good thing, right? Just friendly competition. There's no losing, there's only winning. I'll be delivering pie to our pie contest winners later on this year. I'm excited about that. Actual pie, we'll eat it together. You know, hopefully we'll have local media there to show that local folks who are working hard are getting some recognition from the state level, right? Nonpartisan local office is really important. The offices are typically nonpartisan. You might know what somebody's inclination is, but you know the person. And so you really know what their focus is in life, right? the work that they're doing typically is focused on problem solving, which is really what all of it is supposed to be focused on. Less on politics, less on serving special interest groups or friends, that kind of thing. Not exclusively, right? Doesn't mean that local office is perfect, but typically, right? And so to go out there and to offer recognition to our smallest participating city, Beaconsfield this year, or our largest participating city, Cedar Rapids, that kind of thing, or our most improved cities and counties, good thing to do. Third part of the program is my favorite. That's pie recipes. We collect pie recipes. Pie recipe is simple. Did you come up with a good idea to save money at the local level? That's a pie recipe. Send us your pie recipes. We put your name in there, hopefully with your contact information, and we distribute it across the state within a year so that everybody else in this state, city and county, can see what you did and give you credit for it and do it in their own community. Hopefully, they pick up the phone and call you, or they email you if they have questions and trying to figure out how they're supposed to do it. Make sense? Because the point of this program is not checking boxes, it's actually putting these practices into place so that you can save money at every level. And so we've got pie recipes from eastern Iowa and western Iowa, from the Mississippi River to the Missouri River, of things that people, local leaders have come up with that have saved money, and now we're spreading those ideas all over the state. One of my favorite examples just from this year, I got an example from previous years too, but Dickinson County, I was just there, well, I don't know, I was there earlier this year. I can't remember if it was May or June. But they put together what you'd call a courthouse chiller. Here's the place where you save money. Electricity in the daytime is more expensive than electricity at night. It has to do with demand. Because we all turn the lights on, and we all got the AC going in the daytime, they charge us more. If we can find ways to use electricity at night instead of during the day, we get to take advantage of that and save money. Somebody, I think, Drew, is their name Chris? Is it a Chris in Dickinson County? You think so? I think it was Chris in Dickinson County who came up with this idea. Let's build an underground chiller next to our courthouse. We'll create a lot of cold air at night with cheap electricity, and then all we got to do in the daytime is just blow it in. That way we're only doing one piece in the daytime instead of two pieces. And the harder piece, making it cold, right, we do with the cheaper electricity. Blowing it in is cheap. That's easy. That's just a fan. They expect that with that courthouse chiller, they're going to have an 8-year payback. That's amazing. Really amazing. So that item in our program, in our pie program, is going to save a lot of money, and the more places it gets spread across the state, the better. I think that's a good thing to do. I don't want to forget, we've got local media here, and I want to recognize the folks who are participating, or who did participate already from Mahaska County. We had Beacon, Roswell, New Sharon, Fremont, and Oskaloosa all participate. So credit to your local elected officials in those areas for participating. Happy to see it. Hopefully they'll participate next year, and we'll see more participants as well. Can't remember if I said it already. 99 counties, nearly 350 participants just in the first year of the program. So pretty solid.
Did you say Rosedale?
Yeah. No problem. Are you over there?
Yeah.
Oh.
No, Rosedale, no.
Okay, all right, all right.
I just wanted to make sure it was Rosedale.
Yeah.
Small but mighty.
That's right, that's right, that's right. Certainly one of the smaller ones that did participate. Not as small as Beaconsfield, but close. There's another reason that I think that's important too, that we have this program in place right now. And this has to do with the state's budget and public funding in general. You're going to have a reduction in state assistance to your local entities over the next 5 years. They just removed the backfill, which was created about 10 years ago. And here's the story. State legislature 10 years ago capped what cities and counties can charge for commercial property tax. And they said, if you were getting more than that, we'll do a backfill. We'll keep your revenue level even by providing you with other funds instead of those commercial property tax funds. Problem with that now is they decided this year they're not going to do it anymore, which means that cities and counties are going to be in a pinch. They're not replacing the money anymore, right? So they're just saying, well, you're on your own. So they may have passed a tax cut this year, but a piece of that tax cut was ending the backfill. And ending the backfill means your local taxes are probably going to go up. Might not be this year, might be 3 years down the road, but keep your eye out for that. The good news is we're collecting pie recipes. And all of these things, you know, they're not going to make up every dollar. But in the long run, they can have a big impact on saving some of that money that they're no longer getting from the state. So increasing efficiency is always a good thing to do, and we're happy about that. State budget-wise, we had a surplus this year. Generally speaking, a surplus is a good thing. Having a big surplus after you just came through the biggest crisis that you've had in 100 years, not so good a thing. We had, for example, 750 restaurants go out of business in Iowa, just restaurants alone due to the pandemic. Put your green eye shade on for a second. You be the accountant. That's 750 tax-paying entities. Those businesses, those restaurants pay taxes, their owners pay taxes, their employees pay taxes. And so what we got out of this is a short-term boost in terms of having a bigger surplus this year because we didn't save them, we didn't help them, even though their struggles were no fault of their own. But long-term, we've hurt ourselves. We've hurt that piece of the economy. That piece of the economy is gone. I know I don't need to explain to people in Mahasset County what happens when you lose a business. I know it because I grew up in Winnesheek County in Decorah. In Des Moines, if a restaurant goes out of business, everyone says, shoot, I hope I like the place that moves into that location next better, because there's an assumption that someone else will move in there. Small towns don't have that luxury. And so to lose a business, to lose a restaurant in a small town really can hurt your tax base here. It also just hurts that piece of your community, right? Because if that storefront's empty, what happens to that valuation? What happens to that assessment? And then what happens to the rest of the county's funds as the valuations of the places around it maybe go down too? It's tough. The better decision there would have been to make an investment, right? To make sure that we maintain our economic health in the state, to make sure we protect that. And then at the same time know that those businesses probably are going to be maintained into the future and continue providing tax receipts so that we have long-term fiscal health instead of a short-term bigger surplus. It's good to have a piece of it, by the way. Having a piece of it is fine. There are federal tax changes that are going to take place, I want to say 2024, 2025. Those federal tax changes gave us a boost when they happened in 2018. When they go away, they're going to hurt us a little bit. But if that federal tax change, if the amount we need saved for that is mid-thigh on me, we got all of me in terms of the surplus. So we had a lot that we could have done something with to mitigate the impact of the pandemic. Beyond that, trying to think of what else we've been focused on lately. Yes, sir.
Well, what I basically said to many of these people here at our first Central Committee meeting here at the beginning of this year, when I started out as a county Central Committee member back in 1980, we had 7 congressional districts. When I became county chair and for my first and 3 terms, we had 6. And now we have 4 congressional districts. We've had a steady brain drain, human resources drain, input drain. We're going to have to find a way. Your younger people are going to have to come up with it. I'm an old guy. So I'm not dead yet, but I'm an old guy. And but we're going to have to rethink what we do and say what we want to stop is all our children leaving, all our people dying in despair, all our people not being allowed to bring what they have to the table. That's the kind of stuff we have to figure out, and we're going to need some young people with some really creative steps. And I did go out and canvass last time, but that was out of necessity. I'm past canvassing age.
Sure.
but I still believe in people. I still believe in people.
Amen to that.
The reason we went one way is because one group of people were in. It's time now to move the other way and be inclusive. Not blame government for all our problems, but say, how do we fix the problems?
Well, and I believe in people too. I mean, one of the things we need to be mindful of is how we treat other people. Anybody else notice just the level of bile and anger increasing seems like every year? I think a piece of that is social media. We aren't designed, we didn't evolve to interact with people through computers. Imagine all the things that you, if you're married, that you don't say to your spouse. Because you think better of it, and because you're going to have to see and deal with their reaction, right? You don't have to see and deal with people's reactions online. And so a lot of times online we end up saying things that maybe are just things that we don't really need to say. Typically I find that a lot of times when I might say something in a personal relationship, later on, having not said it, I say, I'm glad I didn't say that. I didn't really need to. It wasn't that important. But yet we go online and we just blast people away, right? We need to quit doing that. It's not, number one, right? That anger that we're holding on to, that we're seeing by having those interactions is not healthy for us. Number two, it's not healthy for them. I mean, here's another thing. Typically not real effective. Does anybody here remember the last time someone convinced you that you were wrong by telling you that you were dumb, or telling you that you were foolish, or by yelling at you? Not typically the best way to do it. So, I mean, I believe in people too. We got to find our way out of this mess that we're in right now, and I think that's a piece of doing it. We've also got open investigations around the state. A lot of them are typical things. You know, we do a state agency, we audit every state agency every year. A lot of them are locals that we have a contract with. And then of course we have locals that we've brought into for special investigations. Special investigation unit in the office is doing what it typically does. We do 20, 25 normally reports every single year. And then a big thing coming up, well actually it's been ongoing. Big piece ongoing has been CARES Act funds, and then American Rescue Plan dollars. CARES Act was what you could say was round one, was passed just as in the spring as the pandemic was ramping up. American Rescue Plan's more recent, passed this year. They're both providing a lot of money to different entities in the state. CARES Act mostly, actually almost entirely to the state level. They provided some funds locally from the state, but pretty much all that went to the state. American Rescue Plan is doing a lot more local dollars. Have we got folks here who are in local office? I think we do. No? All right. Yes, that's right. Well, I guess, so you get to do some advising on that then, don't you?
On occasion I do.
Yeah, all right. What we're telling folks, well, number one, we want to answer people's questions. So asking the county attorney is always a good thing, because they're going to have some familiarity with the statute. But we've been working also with the League of Cities for city government, and for the Iowa State Association of Counties for county government. If there are questions about what's a qualifying expense and what's not, we want folks to ask us, to feel free to ask us. We don't audit every city and county. We do about a third of Iowa's counties, but we are still here to help. That's the mission of the office. And so whether or not we actually audit you specifically is not the concern. We want to provide good guidance. We want to help people make good decisions with those rescue plan dollars so that they don't have to get told later on that it wasn't a qualifying expense. So the more you ask on the front side, the better. Typically, what we're looking at on that is the more specific the question, the clearer we can be with our answer. When people say, well, what can we spend it on? We say, well, generally speaking, broadband, sewer, COVID mitigation, those kinds of things. When they ask us, well, what about, can we build a solar plant for our wastewater treatment plant. Well, we can give you a much more specific kind of yes or no answer on that, right? For that one specifically, you can. If you're doing solar generation or renewable energy generation for your sewer plant, you're good, at least in terms of the amount of energy coming from it that's going to go to the solar plant, right? So if it's a huge solar plant and only 10% of it's going to be used for sewer, then only 10% of the cost could be covered by rescue plan dollars. So the more specific the question, the better we can give the guidance. I've heard from lots of local officials who have some trepidation about the amount of money that's coming in. Totally understandable. None of us have really ever seen this before, right? What I tend to say is, think about the shelters, the bridges, the amenities that we have across the state that still have that cornerstone in them that says built by the CCC 1935, right? Those are the kinds of investments that we can make with these funds that are really going to boost our communities and provide us with amenities that last for a long time. And that's a good thing to do. You have to make sure that the way you're spending these dollars is a qualifying expense. You have to. But that doesn't mean you can't provide an amenity to your community that you don't have right now, that would make your community a more attractive place to live and stay, right? And that's a difficult thing to do. It's an important thing to do, though. An example I always like to go to is, personally, I like being outside. The more time I can spend outside, the happier I am, especially when it feels like this. So, if your community doesn't have a covered workspace or gathering place, like a gazebo, or maybe one that's got twice the square footage and screened in if you want it to be, that also has high-speed internet access into it, you could create one and that would be a qualifying expense for your American Rescue Plan dollars. Why? Well, we know that outdoor transmission of COVID is an infinitesimal risk compared to indoors. And if you are giving people an outdoor working space with high-speed internet access where they can do their work that they need to do without having to be indoors for internet, if you're giving them an outdoor space that is sheltered where they can have meetings, right, where they can eat meals, you are literally giving them a place to go to where they are at lower risk of transmission of COVID. And so it's going to qualify. But here's the flip side. For all the people like me who just like to be outside, it's one more thing in town that they enjoy, right? Growing up in Decorah, if you could add one thing in town that was one more thing that families liked, one more thing that might keep an entrepreneur in town, that was a win, period. I spent my junior and my senior year in high school getting a skate park built in Decorah. It's still there. It's still tiny, but it still matters. It's as small as it was then. But it's a place where kids can go who want to skateboard, and that's great. It's just those little things in small towns that help you have the opportunity to keep folks around and to keep having a small, tight-knit community that so many of us enjoy being a part of. So our advice on that is ask lots of questions. Try to get two birds with one stone. You know, do something that's on the wish list. And before you take your vote, write it all down. Write down what the situation is now, what it is you're putting the money into, and all the different ways in which that is a qualifying expense. You know, if you can make it qualify in two different ways, say so from the start, because then it's clear. My take on this, and this is a prediction, you can't hold me to it, but my guess is that a lot of the review of American Rescue Plan dollars is going to be for strict compliance, not so much for whether or not you're close to the line. Does that make sense? And so the more questions you ask, if you do something, but you've asked your auditor, if it's a private CPA firm, or you've asked the state auditor's office, I would guess if the feds disagree later on, the fact that you had guidance that you had relied upon, with this much money out there, they're going to probably say, all right, because they're going to have much bigger fish to fry, if that makes sense. But again, this is an opportunity for excitement. This these dollars coming into the community at the local level are going to be able to do things for our communities that are really big opportunities to make investments, right? Really big opportunities to invest. And I think that that's fundamentally a good thing for our state. It's going on in every state, but it makes it that much more important for us to do it here, because we don't want them doing it in a way that's better than us. We want to do it in a way that's effective, that's going to keep people here too. Who's got questions about anything? We can all just sit here and enjoy the breeze. It is very nice. Drew, what did we not hit on? Drew runs the PI program in our office, so if you got questions about it, he's a good guy to talk to. Solar? Oh yeah, good point. That's another one of those pie recipes that we have worked to put together. I think it was 2014, the Iowa Supreme Court made it clear that there are multiple ways that local entities can have a solar project. It was a decision called Eagle Point Solar. And since then, you've seen a lot more solar and renewable energy getting installed at the local level. Okay, well, somebody ought to take a look and see what's going on with that. Figure out, is it working? Are we saving money? And so our office did that this year. We issued a report in the spring that said that the average publicly owned solar installation in the state of Iowa is saving taxpayers $750,000. It's good money. It's real money, especially with the backfill going away. Having that kind of money can really be fantastic. We had school districts who, in response to our questions, said, we have an extra teacher in the classroom because of our solar installation. And for most entities, that investment's going to just be a direct line. So if you do a solar installation that's double the size, howdy, double the size of your average one, you might be saving $1.5 million. There's pretty universal feedback on this. We had a lot of people who were very happy with the work that they did, very happy with the project that they got, and I don't think we heard from anyone that they had a bad experience. So if you're looking to save money at the local level, having your school district, your county, your city do one of those solar installations, you will save money doing that. There's multiple ways to do it. You can buy the equipment and own it yourself and insure it yourself. You can have someone else do all of that and just agree to buy the electricity that it produces. That's called a third-party purchase agreement. Different advantages, different drawbacks to either one. So what you want to do is just going to depend on what you think is best for your community, but either way, you're in a pretty good spot. Let's see here. That's the general update of what we've been up to. I guess I can tell you a little bit more too about what we're doing specifically in the office. We came in, obviously with the pandemic, it's been a rough year. I was here virtually in 2020. That was awful. I would have a day at town halls, but it would be me in the guest room of our house looking at my computer screen, repeating about a 20-25 minute update before pausing for questions. And most people, of course, had their cameras turned off. So after a little while, I felt like I was repeating myself to myself. This is much more fun, not to mention we're outside. But it's been a tough year for all of us. We got through it, I think, at the beginning, having folks working from home. A little bit of an uptick in productivity. Towards the end, I think it was a little bit negative. A little bit of a wash overall, pretty close, depending on who you ask. But most of our folks, what we're doing now is we're back in the office half-time. Here's the idea behind this long-term. We'd actually made a lot of changes prior to the pandemic that were designed to equip our office to have folks work remotely. We changed office policies. We changed our rules, because that was one of the things that when I first came into office, people illustrated as a major concern. I sat down, spent the first 3 months, every Thursday and Friday afternoon was set aside to talk with anybody in the office who wanted to talk with me. And we encouraged people to sign up, sat down with most folks, 20 minutes, piece of it was, you know, what's your name, where are you from, read any good books lately? But a piece of it was always, how can I make your job better, right? I know where the work's done. It's not by me. It's by the roughly 100 people in our office that are in there day in, day out, digging into those audits, looking at those spreadsheets and those bank records, right? They're the ones that are most important to keep happy because we want to make sure that they like their job, because then they're going to stick around the more experience they get. One of the things they said is we want to be able to work remotely more. Why, if I have the ability to do this job somewhere else, do I have to come sit in this cubicle? I live in Adel. It's a drive every day, right? Not me personally, but a staffer might say that. If they're doing that, that's a little bit less time that they're working, a little bit less time that they're with their family, either way. Some people like it, great. Other people don't. Let's let them do what they want. So we had made adjustments that made it easier for people to work at home, which panned out well. Now here's what we're doing now that I hope can be replicated by the rest of state government. We got people in the office 2 days a week and home 3 days a week. So they're home, they're with their team in the office with the people they work with specifically for about half the week, and then they're home. What that means is, for the time being, we get to maintain a little bit more distance from each other, right? So we're not sharing quite as much air with each other. Long term, what I think that will mean is we can compress the amount of square footage that we use. Why would that be good? Because right now the state of Iowa rents a lot of commercial real estate in Des Moines. And all that commercial real estate that we're renting in Des Moines is costing you money, right? Because the whole idea there is we're renting it because there isn't enough room in buildings that the state owns. Well, if we can find enough state employees who are still productive, working at home 3 days a week and in the office 2 days a week, we can compress the amount of square footage that we need and end those leases. That would be good for taxpayers across the state. So we're doing that and hoping that that's going to have an impact. One other change that we made, we have a new rule in the office. Statewide work, statewide jobs. Simple. We do statewide work, so we should offer statewide jobs. Prior to me coming in, you had to work either in Des Moines, Ames, or Iowa City, because that's where we had offices. Now the rule is, once you've got a year of experience, and we sort of know that you know what you're doing, you live anywhere you want to. So if you want to be in Cherokee, if you want to be in Oski, you're good. Just let us know, and we have you make the move. There's lots of good things that happen out of this. And part of this came out of my experience at the Attorney General's office. I was in area prosecutions, which would mean we would take cases in different counties of the state when a county attorney, for whatever reason, wanted to make a referral. I tried a couple of cases here. Typically, any courthouse that you go to in the state, if you walk in the door and you're a public employee trying to do work, you can go to the clerk or someone else and ask, is there a place I can work today? And they typically say yes. The jury room typically is empty. Sometimes the courtroom's empty. Sometimes there's a workspace that nobody's in, right? If it's not at the county courthouse, it's at the city hall. But the idea is that we have publicly owned workspace out there in the state of Iowa that has extra capacity. So it's another way that we can move people to places that are already available and use that resource instead, right? And what we've been able to do for our folks is typically they don't have to we don't have to make any arrangements for lease because they just are able to use the space they have. It also makes our employees happier. Again, people who are happy with their job tend to do a better job at it. It also reduces costs for our clients. If we have somebody that lives in Oski and we just have them do audits in the local area here, then those local clients are not paying for hotel costs. Hotel costs are a much bigger expense than mileage. That makes their audits a little bit cheaper. Here's the biggest reason this is helpful. It brings a family, maybe not a family, maybe just one person, but whoever it brings into a small town, they're more important there than they are in Des Moines, right? We all know that's true. Bringing just one family into town, just one more person into town, that's a much bigger impact here than it is in Polk County or Dallas County. It just really matters. In Decorah, I think the billboard's down now, but at least recently this year, you could see a billboard with Eric Svetska on it. You don't know who Eric Svetska is, you'll probably never hear that name again, but he went to high school, I think he was a year behind me, went off to college, went to medical school, did his residency, and then just recently moved back with his wife and kids. And the Winneshiek Medical Center put up a billboard, said, please welcome Eric back to Decorah. They don't put billboards up in Des Moines when somebody moves to town, right? I mean, we know this, right? State government should be doing more to move the economic benefits of state government into the places that still pay state taxes. You pay state taxes here. If there's somebody that wants to live here, they should get to live here, period. So we've had some success with that. Obviously, not a lot of people making life-changing decisions over the last 18 months or so. But even just in the first few months, we did have a handful of people take us up on it. Here's another side benefit of it. It is really hard for local auditing firms, local accounting firms, local CPA firms to find people to take over their book of business. Same thing with local law firms, typically. We had somebody who wanted to move to Mount Pleasant and took us up on our offer. Said, I want to be down there. Can I move? We said, yes, you can. They moved down there. Once they were there, they found a local CPA firm that was looking to hand that business off to retire. But they hadn't had anybody. Or, as I know a lot of law firms have up in Decorah, my hometown, maybe they had somebody for a year or two, but then they left. Giving people the ability to move to town and be there and have that job also can help with a continuation of local businesses too. Because then Drew left our office and joined the CPA firm. I'm delighted. It's easier for our office to find a replacement for Drew than it is for that CPA firm to find a replacement for whoever was there already, right? So there's a lot that we can be doing, I think, with state government to make things easier on smaller towns, to spread the benefits of state employment across the state, as long as we're just willing to take a little bit of time and a little bit of energy to get it done. Any questions? If not, we'll hit the road. I thought that was a bee. That might be a signal. Yeah, that's right. Well, thanks for coming out. I really appreciate it. Look, if you want to get a hold of me, official email address is rob.sand@aos.iowa.gov. You can also reach out on Facebook and Twitter. If you find me on there, it's me you're actually talking to, not somebody else. So, however you prefer, all of that's fine. Thank you again for coming out and taking the time.
Very interesting. Thank you.
Thanks.
Coming.
You betcha.
Thank you for your accessibility.
Yeah.
You're easy to get a hold of, and we appreciate that.
Thanks. I think that's important. I think this is the way you're supposed to do it.
And the Transparency Tuesday.
Oh, yeah.
And informational.
Sure, sure.
Happy National Dog Day to Pals.
Is that today?
I think so. I thought you'd bring them along.
Okay. Oh,
It's Dog Day.
I have thought about it. I have. The concern would just be a lot of car time. And we schedule them so tight. I've only got 15 minutes for lunch. I like efficiency. And so if I brought the dog, I don't know how that would mess with the efficiency.
True.
It would be a little bit fun though.
I think so.
And she likes car rides, so maybe someday.
Okay.
Thanks again. Good to see you.
Hey, Rob.
How are things